If 1994 was the end of some things in my life, then 1995 would be the beginning of more grand adventures. I had been unemployed for the winter, and the employment center had set up a program in town for re-employment. Chad and I were both enrolled in the course they offered. It taught basic computer skills, which was going to be the way of the future. Neither Chad nor I had any computer experience, and we figured it couldn't hurt to learn how to use one. I think Windows was just new then. I know I didn't have to try and learn DOS. It was a course geared to assist people in getting back into the workforce, whether they were making a career change or just finding the right job. We could then decide if we wanted to get further training in a desired field, assistance in finding the right job and applying for it, or the ambitious few who might want to start their own business. There were many programs in place to assist any one of us in the course to do any of these things. It was a step-by-step process and was very well laid out to help you make the right decision for yourself. I met some great people through the course. Each of us also had to find a job sponsor that would meet with us once a week to offer encouragement and discuss the course progression. Going through the process of making decisions in regards to my future career, I decided I'd like to run my own business. I already had years of experience with horses, and I had my Level 1 Western Rider coaching certificate. I had to make a business plan, project my future income that I would generate, how it would come together and happen. I required a list of personal references and business references. There was an entire process to go through over a 2-month period. There was government assistance in place so that I could receive unemployment insurance for a full year if my business plan was approved. My business would require a name, so I came up with Tazy's Riding Stables. I came up with that name by combining the first 2 letters of my last name and the last 2 letters of my first name. It would become a name that stuck. I had to lay out my business plan with my dad because Mom and Dad would play a large role in my business being successful. I had no property of my own, and my horses were at the farm, so I made a rental agreement for the use of the barn and corrals. The monthly fee included feed, but all other costs associated with the horses would be my responsibility. It was a 3-month course by the time we had completed our work experience. Everyone taking the course had to find a place of employment that would give them training for a 3-week period before we received a certificate of completion. There was no facility in Swift Current that could give me any training in regards to horses, running a business training horses, or giving riding lessons. The closest thing I could find was Superga Training Stables, and at the time they were located in Moose Jaw, which is an hour and a half away. After an interview with Supergas, they agreed to provide me with training. It was too far to drive back and forth to Swift Current every day for 3 weeks, so I found room and board in Moose Jaw with a couple that my job sponsor knew. For 3 weeks in the month of March, I worked for Superga Training Stables. This was a great deal for them, free labor in exchange for training. I mucked a lot of stalls. I already had experience in that. I was allowed to ride 1 horse for 20 minutes in the 3 weeks I worked with them. The Supergas were really good people, and I liked them. They knew how to train reining horses, and I learned the most from talking to them and asking questions. I was very sick the last week I was there. I tried working sick for 2 days and finally had to beg off to go home. I had an upper respiratory infection with a high fever. My chest hurt so bad I felt like I was breathing in fire. A doctor visit resulted in prescription for antibiotics, but I was still sick for over a week. A group gathering was held after we were done our work experience to receive our certificate of completion of the re-employment program. I maintained contact with the instructors of the course. If I had questions, needed advice, or just a friend to talk to, I could always count on them. Now I knew enough about computer programs to be able to make up my own brochures for my new business. I had a lot of work to do before I could open my new business to the public. The rabbits and cages had been removed from the barn the previous year with the closing of the rabbit farm. With my dad's help, we built new stalls in the barn and new walls to make a heated water room. The addition on the front of the barn that had been storage for rabbit feed became my new tack room, an office with a heater that could be turned on when required. We completed the renovation with a hitching post outside the front of the barn. I didn't mind the hard work. I was excited. Now all I needed was a few more good quality riding horses for lessons and guided trail riding. I already had Raisin and Fury, and we had one other horse. Even though my dad thought his riding days were over, he still wanted to enjoy the horses. Dad's friend Dale talked him into purchasing a black Tennessee walking mare that was broke to drive. Dad borrowed a cart and bought single driving harness, and drove that horse all over the countryside. Her registered name was Gun, Smoke, and Roses, and I don't know why the breeders named her Palika. We just called her Polly. Leanne and I still kept in contact, and she had a quarter horse gelding at the time. Her horse had been boarded for the winter at a friend's farm, and that friend happened to be John Coop's son. Leanne had not been planning to ride much anymore due to her allergies. She was considering selling her horse to me, but wasn't sure at that time. I asked if she would be willing to lease me her horse. The answer was yes, so we made up a lease agreement, and I went and picked Nitro up from Coop's. Nitro was a 15-hand-high 17-year-old gelding, dark bay in color with a narrow blaze and one hind sock. He was a very spirited horse despite his age. Another friend who no longer lived nearby said that her dad had a horse that was not being used at her parents' farm. I contacted Bob and asked if he would be willing to sell the Morgan gelding he had at his farm. He agreed to the sale, and I purchased Buddy, a 15 two-hand-high 12-year-old chestnut gelding, from him. Buddy had not been ridden for a long time and would require some retraining. Now I had 5 horses to ride and prepare for lessons and guided trail rides, which would be the main portion of my business. Taisy's riding stables opened in May. If I wasn't giving riding lessons on Raisin or taking customers on guided trail rides, I was riding the horses to keep them fit and working well. I also started Polly to saddle. She paced, therefore was an entirely different horse to ride. I only used Polly if I needed a spare horse. I was looking to purchase a pony for the really small kids to ride. Nitro was too spirited. Buddy and Polly were too big. Fury was too sensitive. Raisin was everyone's favorite despite his size. A gentleman an hour east of town advertised a Welsh Shetland cross pony for sale. Mom and I drove out to have a look at her. She was a pretty little Palomino mare, not too big, but she wasn't really well trained either. She too would need training. It turned out that Vic and my parents knew each other. While there, something in another corral caught my eye. I went over for a better look. Standing there, eating whole oats that spilled from his lips, was the smaller sorrel gelding that was nothing but skin and bones. I was horrified at the sight of the horse standing before me, but politely asked Vic what his story was. Vic explained to us that he had seen the horse a few weeks ago in a neighboring field, and upon questioning the neighbor about the horse, the neighbor just said that he'd bought the old horse in the fall and put him out to pasture to retire. Unfortunately, our previous winter had been extremely cold with heavy snowfall. That poor old horse had been on a pasture with no shelter, digging through 2 feet of snow for his sustenance all winter long. Vic felt sorry for the horse and brought him home. He'd been feeding him whole oats for 2 weeks, but the horse hadn't gained any weight yet that he noticed. I observed the older horse. His hooves were in good condition and showed no sign of neglect. The horse watched me with bright eyes. He had a will to live, or he would not have been trying to eat with so much enthusiasm. Whole oats was the wrong kind of food for this horse. The horse suddenly looked familiar. I recalled the previous summer when Leanne had Nitro at her parents' farm next door. She considered buying an older broke horse for her niece. She'd invited me over to have a look at the horse some people brought over, perhaps the same people she bought Nitro from. He seemed like a nice little horse, but I thought he was a little thin then, and Leanne did not buy him. I remembered his name was Simba. I asked Vic if this horse had a name. He said, "Oh, sure, it's Simba." I already knew where Simba had come from, and I knew that he was kid broke to ride. I made arrangements to purchase both the pony mare and Simba, and Vic would deliver them later that day. It was after supper when Vic pulled into the yard at the farm with his stock trailer. We were unloading Simba and the no-name pony when my dad came over to talk to Vic. Dad knew the horses were being delivered, but I had not had an opportunity to tell my dad Simba's sad story yet. I was not prepared for Dad's reaction to Simba's horrific state. There was a lot of obscene shouting about getting that sorry-looking nag off his property. Dad yelled at Vic and told him he had taken advantage of his daughter and made no bones about letting us know how angry he was. It took some fancy talking, but we calmed my dad down and made an agreement. I told my dad Simba's story about how he had been cared for all of his life, but that he had just survived a bad winter and deserved another chance. I would not pay Vic for Simba for a period of 3 weeks to see if I could get Simba's condition turned around. If Simba did not improve in that time period, Vic would come back and get him. If, on the other hand, Simba did improve, I would pay Vic at that time. Dad and Vic both agreed to this arrangement. That evening was June 9th, 1995. Simba had already been eating whole oats for the past 2 weeks, but most of them were going right through his system without being digested. He wasn't chewing them properly. There was a nice little grass pasture near the barn, so I put Simba in there alone so no other horse could pick on him, and gave him some rolled oats soaked in water. We had an oat roller to roll all of our oats for our livestock, so it was easily digested. Simba happily slobbered them up. It took him an hour to eat a gallon of oats. The next day I took photos of Simba so that I could keep track of any progress Simba was making to show proof to my dad. I took a few photos once a week. I didn't have a horse weigh tape at the time, so I don't have accurate records of his weight gain. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Simba still had a winter coat. He could not roll because he was too weak to lie down and get back up again. I couldn't brush him because he had no flesh under his skin, just bones. I had to use my hands to rub the winter coat from his body. I made a vet appointment to have him checked for worm infestation and check his teeth. I fed Simba a gallon of soaked rolled oats with a little corn oil in it every 2 hours for a total of 6 feedings per day. He had free choice grass and some alfalfa hay. I know now that I could have caused Simba to colic, feeding him the way that I did. Perhaps he was eating similar to a horse grazing on pasture with extra calories. It didn't seem to matter because Simba ate all of it. When he ate hay or grass, he would spit out big wads. He had chewed it enough. The next day we took Simba to the vet clinic and checked him over thoroughly. Tests verified that there were no worms, but his teeth required floating and he was missing some molars. The vet wasn't sure if Simba would make a full recovery or even be able to be ridden again. We floated Simba's teeth and took him home. Riding lessons and guided trail rides continued to be a daily occurrence, and I was keeping busy caring for my horses too, and loved every minute of it. 1 week passed. Simba had gained some weight on my feeding program and was beginning to show a little shine on his neck. We took more photos for Simba's album. 2 weeks went by. Simba's belly line was filling in and the winter coat was nearly rubbed away. We could start using brushes on him at this point. On week 3, there was an all-over glow to the little sorrel horse, and we could only see the outline of his ribs. He still had a long way to go, but Simba was making a great recovery. I brought Simba up to the house to show him to my dad. My dad had to admit he was impressed with the recovery of the little sorrel horse. Dad gave his nod of approval, and I was permitted to pay Vic for Simba. July was one of my busiest months for my business. My dad's friend Dale brought his team of Clydesdale horses to the farm for the summer, and we gave wagon rides to groups as well. When I started my riding stables, Dale always called me Tazy Lynn, and when I started braiding feathers in my hair, he called me Tazy Lynn Two Feathers. To this day, Dale still calls me Tazy Lynn. I don't know where the Lynn part came in, but it was his name for me. I had regular students for riding lessons that came once a week, and I lost track of the number of young girls I gave riding lessons to. We had a safe, fantastic July. Simba became the barnyard pet and was allowed to graze on Mom's front lawn. He never ran away, just stayed close by. I was still feeding him 6 times a day. If I was in the house for lunch or having a coffee with my mom when Simba's feeding time came around, Simba would come to the house and nicker. He could hear us talking from the open window. August was also busy. By the middle of the month, Simba had regained enough muscle to look like a real horse again. I concluded that Simba was of Morgan breeding once he had recovered from starvation. I gave riding lessons to some of the smaller girls on Simba for the remainder of the summer and early fall. Simba was about the same height as Fury, 14'1" hands high. Also that summer, while riding Nitro, I noticed that he would take one lead at a lope with ease, but would refuse the other lead. He would crow hop in protest or lope on the wrong lead, which was very rough ride. One of the instructors from the reemployment course had horses, and she also did some form of massage chiropractic on horses. I always jokingly called her Dr. Doolittle. Dr. Doolittle and I kept in close contact and spoke at least once a month or more often. I called and asked if she would come out and have a look at Nitro to see if she could help him. Dr. Doolittle came out and worked on Nitro. He had some vertebrae in his back messed up, and his one hip was giving him trouble. Within an hour of her working on him, he was feeling much better. I rested him that day, and when I rode him the next day, he was a joy to ride. His leads were all perfect, and he picked them up without any difficulty. Nitro was much better for my customers to ride after his treatment. During the summer, my young cousin Sheila from Manitoba came to work with me on the horses for experience. She got free room and board and all of the riding experience and lessons she wanted in exchange for the work she did for me. It worked out well for both of us. Sheila developed a special relationship with Buddy, the chestnut Morgan, and I offered to sell him to her when she went back home in September. Later that month, Chad and I made the trip to Manitoba to visit our cousins there and to deliver Buddy to his new home. Dale took his Clydesdales home for the winter, and I sold the pony mare because she was pregnant. I was not prepared to deal with any foals at that time. I continued riding lessons and guided trail rides throughout the fall months until it got too cold. That winter I had the following horses at the farm: Raisin, Fury, Nitro, Simba, and Dad's horse Polly. I had no indoor riding facilities, so I closed the riding stables to the public until spring. That winter I discovered that Nitro was broke to drive. Quite by accident, really. Raisin had never been a driving horse until I harnessed him up, put the cart behind him, and drove him either. I never put blinders on Raisin when I drove him. He trusted me, so went willingly where I asked him to go. Nitro was basically the same as Raisin that way. I just hooked him up to the cart one day and started driving him. Dad had an antique doctor's buggy and a sleigh completely refinished and hauled from his hometown in Ontario and shipped to us. We had never had the sleigh out because it was antique. It was beautiful with its dark painted red exterior and brushed velvet black seat cushions. It had delicate wooden shafts, and that was part of the reason we could only hook up a well-trained driving horse to it. Dad allowed me to hook Nitro up to the sleigh, and I went for a ride in the open field now covered with 6 inches of lovely fresh snow. I came back to the yard. Nitro was so well behaved in harness, I offered to take Dad for a ride, and away we went. It was great fun, and Dad marveled at how good Nitro was in harness, even better than Polly. It wasn't long before Mum came out of the house with my 83-year-old grouse mama all bundled up and said that they wanted to go for a sleigh ride too. I was more than happy to take them. This was great fun, and if my grouse mama was making the effort to come out, I was honored to take her for a sleigh ride. It was a little squishy in the seat with the 3 of us, but my grouse mama was very little and frail, and my mom is small too. We went out in the field in the pristine snow on a sunny winter day for a 1-horse open sleigh ride. I have a photo and a wonderful memory. Sometimes my friends and I would give each other presents for special occasions. That Christmas, Leanne gave me a 1-month gym membership. She had started working out at the gym and really wanted me to be her workout partner. I had always been in pretty good physical condition all of my life because of the hard physical labor I did on the farm and construction. I agreed to attend the gym with Leanne on my trial membership and work out with her. Leanne and I were really tough on each other and pushed each other to the limit. We met new people that also worked out at that gym, and they helped us with our workout schedule and gave us advice on proper eating to build muscle. I made some great new friends there at the gym, too. They were very active and adventurous. After the first few torturous weeks at the gym, I got past the pain part of working out with free weights. I was feeling good about working out 4 days a week and extended my gym membership. Leanne and I continued working out as partners at the gym, pushing one another for just one more rep. There were evenings when I got home to have a shower after working out at the gym that my arms were so tired it was all I could do to wash my hair. I continued to take care of all of my horses that winter and ride on the nice days. By May, I had gained 23 pounds of muscle. I had never been that heavy in all my life, but I must admit I looked pretty good. I could still wear most of my clothes that I had worn before. They just fit differently. I had to give up my gym time starting in May because I was too busy with my horses and riding stables. As the days warmed and I was riding all the time, I noticed that my riding had improved from the strength training at the gym. I was more agile and found that the work I had to do around the barn and with my horses was much easier. I continued to use Raisin, Nitro, and Simba for riding lessons, and on a few rare occasions I rode Simba. He was a good little horse. Many little girls celebrated their birthday parties at my riding stables. The parents supplied the cake and beverages and brought the whole kid crew out for horse rides. It was a grand adventure. My grouse mama passed away that June. I was glad more now than ever that I had taken her for that sleigh ride in the winter and witnessed the smiles from her on that one last ride. All that summer of 1996, I was busy with riding lessons and guided trail rides. My new friends from the gym came out quite frequently to go riding with me. In exchange, they invited me to the lake just south of Swiftcurrent to go water skiing that summer. I only attempted water skiing once before in my life. It occurred when I was 17, in the very frigid waters of the South Saskatchewan River, and all I could remember was that I had forgot to let go of the ski rope when I wiped out and had nearly drowned. I wasn't a teenager anymore. I was a grown woman, and I was in the best physical shape of my life. I told my new friends of my previous failed attempt at water skiing. They were all accomplished water skiers and were going to try barefoot water skiing that summer. My friends were very understanding and took the time to teach me how to water ski properly in much warmer water. With their patience and understanding, I was up on 2 water skis the first day. I had so much fun and could hardly believe I was actually water skiing. They later told me that they were so patient teaching me to water ski because I had been patient in teaching them the basic fundamentals of horseback riding. My business was going well that summer. Between riding every day and water skiing, many evenings with my friends, I was in fine physical form. I went from being a total beginner water skier to getting up and skiing on one ski by the end of the summer. At the end of August, I was a bridesmaid for my brother's wedding. It was quite a change from a t-shirt, jeans, and boots to being all gussied up for the momentous occasion. In the fall, my dad decided he didn't want to drive Polly anymore. Dad and Polly had a minor mishap, and she required shoeing once a month because she was so hard on a set of shoes due to her pacing gait. Polly was sold to Donna, who later sold her to a woman from Europe, and Polly flew overseas. In my travels that fall, I purchased a Welsh cross pony gelding named TJ that was sorrel in color with 4 high white socks and a blaze. My new sister-in-law, Jamie, got a horse from her uncle as a gift, a black Percheron cross weanling colt named Mischief. On occasion, Jamie would ride with me too. Farm work never ceases, and livestock requires constant care. We had 4 feeder steers in the corral that winter that we were also feeding in addition to my horses. It seemed I was always busy, although a little less so in the winter. This was not going to be the case this winter. My newly married brother was spending 7 weeks in Moose Jaw, challenging all the classes and exams for his journeyman carpenter certificate. During the winter, Dad and Chad would push snow for one of the local malls. They had a contract for snow removal together with Dale, who also owned big equipment. They decided that I would be nominated to run the snowplow truck when snow removal was required in Chad's absence. That was fine. I could drive the truck with the plow on it. There was just one small problem. I was blind in one eye and could not see the one side of the plow blade. This also made judging distance difficult. It was too confusing for me to drive a standard truck and run the levers for the plow. I had never done it before. Dad and Chad came up with a plan, and this is how it went. I would drive the truck and watch one side of the plow blade, and my sister-in-law Jamie would run the levers for the plow to lift it up and down as required and watch the other side of the blade. She would be my other eye or set of eyes. It all sounded good in theory. Snow removal at a mall takes place at night after the mall closes or first thing in the morning before it opens. After a heavy snow in January, we got up at 2 a.m. for our maiden voyage of the snowplow truck. We met at the farm where the equipment was stored in the heated shop. Dad loaded the Bobcat on the trailer and then pulled the trailer with the Bobcat on it with his 1-ton truck. Jamie and I would follow in the plow truck with its big orange blinking lights. We met Dale at the mall where he would plow snow with his grader. They had a method for plowing a long stretch at a time. I rode in the truck with Chad once before he left, so I knew how this was supposed to work. Dale would start out at one end of the parking lot with the grader blade down, and we were supposed to put down the plow blade of the truck beside him, tag the side of the grader blade, and push the snow as one long blade across the parking lot. At the end, we had to lift the blade back up and return to the other end of the parking lot where we first started and do this all again from one side of the parking lot to the other until we were done. My dad drove the Bobcat and would pile the snow up at the end of the parking lot as we were scraping it all towards him. There was a front lot, a back lot, and driveways to clean. When the front lot was done, we stopped for a coffee break. Dad and Dale were pretty impressed with us girls on our first attempt at the plow truck. Jamie has a good set of eyes for me and working the plow blade so that I could focus on my driving. Next up was the back lot. It went fairly smoothly until we were all done that part of the parking lot. Then we had to do driveways, which were a little trickier. We had tagged Dale's grader blade and made it all the way to the end of the driveway with the snow. All was good. When we were backing up to take the next pass of the driveway, Dad pulled in front of the truck and stopped the Bobcat, opened the Bobcat door, and gave us thumbs up. Jamie was watching this while I was looking where I was backing the truck and said to me, "Oh, look, we're doing a good job." I turned to look at Dad and said, "No, we're not. The blade is down. Lift the blade, Jamie. Lift the blade." Later, when we were having coffee and breakfast at the truck stop, Dad and Dale teased the tar out of Jamie for forgetting to lift the blade. I told them what she said about doing a good job, and we laughed over that. I had worked with Dad around equipment long enough to know that if he was giving you the thumbs up, it wasn't because you were doing a good job. 7 weeks seemed to take forever. I'm sure that we pushed snow a couple times a week that winter. I think Dad and Dale enjoyed working with us girls pushing snow. Jamie and I were glad when Chad got home, but it didn't snow much after that. Not one member of my family was prepared for what the spring of 1997 would bring.